Welcome back to the On Business podcast. With tons of experience in different industries in Canada and the United States, Danielle and Brandon give you real talk, no nonsense expert advice about running and owning successful companies. Here's your host, Danielle Jenkins and Brandon White.
So today we're talking about guaranteed hours for employees, mostly relating to people who run services companies.
Yes. Do you want to start or should I put in my 2 cents for the day, Brandon?
You can put in your 2 cents since
Perfect.
I think your company really fits this topic almost better. Well, I don't know, better than anyone's because of how you do appointments and the number of customers. And it's almost similar to someone who cuts hair, but let's talk about that. So yeah, you go first.
Cool. Okay. So for everybody listening, I thought this would be a great topic for those who are in the service industry because one thing that I found that when I first started the company, and for those of you who do listen and have listened for, time and time again, since we've been recording this podcast with us, is that maybe not just in the cleaning industry, but in other industries as well, there is a lack of that professional and sophistication and quality employees. Unfortunately, something like the cleaning industry, grass cutting, maintenance, things like that are home service businesses tend to not retain the most quality employees. And after digging, over the last couple of years while running the company, I found that a lot of it has to do with not having consistent, stable employment. People need stable employment. And so when Brandon and I discuss why we do certain things or how we've done certain things or experiences and wins and losses, a lot of it comes down from experience. And so when I first started, I would meet with a client and I would basically say, what would you like? What schedule would you like? And they would say, oh, well, the time that works for me is 10 to 2 because my baby's napping at this time or because of this or because of this. And so I would then take that client and put them in for a 3-hour time spot because that's all they wanted to pay for between 10 and 1 because that's the time that worked for them. So I would do that. And then as the company grew or the business at the time grew, we would have to work around all of those things. Well, then we're limited to what we can do in the morning per se, because if that person wanted to work or wanted that time slot from 10 to 1, we could then only do somebody in the morning prior to that client, maybe from 8 to 9:30 or 7:30 to 9:30. But then we have to find employees that want to work as early as 7:30, maybe one day a week. And then we're limited to the afternoon and we have a 6-hour time spot to fill, or we can only do a 3-hour time spot. And then people's hours are all over the place. They're maybe only getting 4 hours a day or 6 hours a day. And nobody can run their life on an inconsistent paycheck. So when I noticed these things were happening, I took it upon myself to, and I'm going to be honest, when I talk about this, I took it upon myself. I was very scared to do this because I know a lot of clients were probably going to be pissed off. A lot of people probably wouldn't like the change, and a lot of people probably didn't want to pay for the little bit of increase that we did. So I took it upon myself to basically split our days on the residential side. I'm talking the residential division now because it's much easier to explain, especially with the other service businesses that are probably listening. They probably take care of maybe the grass or the project management or something like that on residential properties. So when I split it up, I started thinking, how can I make it so my staff are receiving full-time employment hours and consistent hours, because work-life balance is important, along with how can I ensure that my clients are getting the service that they're paying for and expect from our company, and how can we keep it kind of consistent. And for income, like for revenue, we wanted to make sure that it was the same across. We wanted to make sure we knew what was coming in. And so we set those boundaries with our clients where now we started working from 8:30 to 5. For example, if a client had a home between 1,000 to 2,500 square feet, we allocate, and it's relatively clean and they just need standard cleaning, we allocate 4 hours weekly, biweekly, or monthly, whatever they choose, from either 8:30 to 12:30 or 1 to 5. And the reason we do that, Brandon, is in between 12:30 and 1, the staff have their lunch. And that keeps it steady. The cleaners or our staff know exactly what they are doing every 2 weeks with that client from 8:30 to 12:30. We keep it consistent. So we get a lot of clients, not now, after we've set those boundaries, and those are the things that we explain to our clients. That's how we work. When that first happened, we would have clients that say, well, I don't want to pay for 4 hours. I only want to pay for 3.5. And unfortunately, it was scary because I was thinking, oh my God, we're not going to keep our clients, or we're not going to be able to get new ones to cover those ones that leave. Honestly, it has been the best thing for our company to transition to those boundaries and be able to say, well, it's either this 4 hour or this 8 hour. So then it's consistent. Those staff have the 12:30 or the 8:30 to 5 every day. They know that they're done work at 5 p.m. Our clients are getting what they're paying for. They're extremely happy. They've already approved all of the quotes that we've sent them based on those numbers, and they're happy to proceed. So then we have made it so it's basically in the client's court at that point, because if a client's home really only takes 3 hours, but we've quoted them 4 and they know that's what they have to pay for, we then use that time to go over and above. We do those extra things in that hour that the client's already budgeted for and approved. So now we look 10 times better. Our staff is getting consistent scheduling from 8:30 to 5, Monday to Friday. And our staff and our clients know exactly what to expect. And they're also getting consistent scheduling. So they're not fluctuating their prices. They're not, paying for 3 hours this week and maybe their house is a little messier one week. So then, we need an extra half an hour. And then everybody's frustrated because now schedules are changing. So that is how we do things. And I could talk about it forever. But I just think it's so important. And that's how we kind of structured our consistent scheduling. And then to feed into that, that's how then we were able to offer living wage certified income, because we knew the revenue that was coming in. We knew for sure that clients weren't going to haggle on half an hour or an hour once a week, which was going to pay for that extra income or that extra wages for our staff to have that living wage income. So everything kind of feeds into each other with those things. And I think it's a really good start to set those boundaries and those time spots that make sense for your business.
I tend to agree. I have a comment and a question actually that is tangentially related to the hourly. So we've experienced in the companies that I've run, service companies, the same type of thing where if you don't guarantee your people the hours, then they are going to need to get another job. And then it almost turns into part-time freelancers, what these people effectively can turn into or on demand. And it's stressful for them. And not just from the actual job doing one thing or the other, but I think there's this switching cost in your mind, at least that even I, having done multiple projects at once, which I think entrepreneurs and business owners tends to happen occasionally, is just the switching cost mentally of that wears people out. And then when they are on that job, they're focused on that job, but they're thinking about the next job. I think that in the beginning, I'm sure there's listeners out there who say, oh, well, that's really cool, Brandon and Danielle. That sounds good, but I'm just starting out and I can't finance through cash flow this. And I've struggled with that in the beginning as well. I've tried, because if you don't have a big pot of money saved up to cash flow it, then you're in this bind. And then if you borrow the money and it doesn't work out how you think it's going to work out, which it can work out well for you. But what I've found is that things don't happen as fast. We all think that they're going to happen faster, and sometimes they do. I've had a few instances where they have, but I've had more instances in this model or any model for that matter, where they haven't. So with that in mind, I think you have to be upfront. But as fast as you can shift the responsibility onto you as the core business, then it's on you to fill those hours. And that inherently almost sets goals for every business owner, where a lot of people will say, well, you just get lost in your business. But it's really easy to figure out that you have to pay this person X an hour, and you need to fill 30 hours to pay for that, at least cover that person, and then the extra 10 hours may cover your G&A, which maybe you can live with or not getting because you're the business owner. So I think that's the case. I had an example once with, and I may have talked about this before, so you can tell me. We had a freelancer video editor for actually this podcast, because we've been working on getting the YouTube channel up and running, which we have probably 70 videos in the queue that are waiting on Brandon to do the SEO on them. But it's hard to find a really good video editor, and a video editor who not just edits but almost produces, can do animation, and YouTube is sort of a specialty type thing, or even Venmo, but not really Venmo. YouTube especially, it just has a lot of nuances and things, and people who specialize that is what you want. So we found this lady, and she was awesome. The thing about it was that I didn't get back to her in the timely manner that she expected. Now, some of that was definitely on, most of the responsibility was my fault. I just, with 100 things going on, I didn't see a Slack message, and it got pushed under the rug. And then one day I get an email from her, and she said, well, I can't work for you anymore. I'm going to have to fire you as a customer. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, Brandon, I am a freelancer. I have to fill 40 hours a week. If you're not predictable, then I just can't have you because as a customer, because that's my living. And this is tangentially not exactly related to what you've talked about, but it is tangentially related in the sense that you've got to have everyone in general, if you're doing hourly, has to have X amount of hours. And I said, and I thought about it for a day, and we had spent, I don't know, Danielle, months going through video editors trying to find a fit. So we were deeply invested, and anybody who knows in recruiting, as you do, it's super hard. It's easier to retain a good employee than it is to find a new one, especially after they're in your system. I mean, she was integrated into our Trello board. She's integrated in Slack. She understands the workflows. She understands the business. She understands things like, it sounds trivial, the brand brief. I mean, she's up to speed on all those things. So I came back the next day and I said, look, I'm not going to accept your answer. I don't accept being fired. I take full responsibility that I did not get back to you in time. We need to set some parameters so that deadlines, so that in the future, if you ask me a question and someone could say, well, Brandon, do you really need to put a 24-hour clock on that? Well, I think most things in life are about expectations, missed expectations, and expectations that people make up in their head that somehow think the other person knows because of some transmission of energy, but they don't. And this happens in business. It happens in personal life more probably often than not. So I said, let's just create some guidelines, and I will guarantee that you'll have X hours a week, not unlike you have guaranteed. Well, you have set a minimum, which is effectively what she was setting with me for a homeowner who wants their home closed. So I think house cleaned, not closed. I think you have to shift that responsibility onto you. And I think it's on as a business owner, because then it's motivating. And you ultimately, if you find someone that you've hired, you likely want to keep them. But I will say, and I think before we were recording, you commented on this, and maybe you can, in the beginning, that's super hard. I mean, it can be hard because of cash flow. And I'm only saying that because, probably have a mix of listeners that from people who are starting a business to people who already have a business with a lot of revenue. But either which way, even if you have a business and you're opening a new product line, like when you open the commercial sector, you still face that same challenge. Are you going to use the cash flow from your residential, effectively your profits, and finance a new division? Or are you going to try to make that cash flow positive from the very beginning? And if you're going to do that, then you're going to have limited hours and you're going to have to, I guess, set those expectations. So would you agree that in the beginning, it's very hard to do that, and that you didn't necessarily guarantee 40 hours a week for your people when you started?
Yeah, I can 100% agree with that. So, again, for those who have been listening kind of from the beginning, I was cleaning myself, when I first started the business. So the transition from that, because I myself was, I had like 60 hours a week that I was cleaning. So I had enough, but then I needed to be able to, there were different factors that I had to think about. I had to, hire somebody to take it off of me, right? I then also had to ensure that I didn't say hire 3 people where now there's no money for me. And was I even going to make payroll? Because I had the clients to fill, but all it takes is one client not to pay on time. And now I'm taking money out of my pocket, and I'm talking on a really small level. Like I'm talking maybe 20 clients with 2 employees, or just myself and 1 other, because that's how you start. Everybody starts somewhere. So to go from that to that next level of even hiring 1 person to be able to guarantee hours, you can't. And I think it's just growing pains that we all go through as an entrepreneur, business owner. And I'd like to say that we figured it out, but we figured it out at a point in our business where we had the cash flow, we had the resources and stuff to be able to do so. And I've still tried to help people that are just starting out without taking any clients on how to do that. And, I do a lot of mentorship with new, smaller cleaning industry or cleaning businesses that do start. And one thing that I do tell them is set those boundaries from the beginning. And I'm not talking about the employees, I'm talking with the clients. So set it where it's, that 4-hour or that 8-hour, or whatever your minimums are going to work for you and your business. So in the future, when you do hit a point where you need to hire people, you can kind of offer that stable, structured employment, because that is a problem with cleaning businesses or smaller home service businesses, that the hours are all over the place. You can only offer maybe 6 hours a day because initially your clients only had a 2-hour clean or a 4.5-hour clean, and everything was all over the place. And so I now learned, and one thing that I do tell the people that I do mentor in the cleaning industry or any home service industry is start your business and start thinking really big. Even if you don't want to go really, really big, if you think bigger than what you are now, you will save the time and the stress of doing it down the line, where if you do start like you had maybe 5 employees that you needed to guarantee 40 hours a week, at least then you can structure yourself accordingly then without necessarily using funds, if that makes sense. You think of those processes and those systems ahead of time. And to your point about, taking it as a personal goal that you need to do. So I know take a couple step back. If a client, for example, another boundary we set, if a client cancels within 24 hours, we still charge them and they sign off on that in their client package, because if they give us more than 24 hours notice, we can always fill it. If a client gives us less than 24 hours notice to cancel their visit, we still charge them what they should have charged, their 4-hour visit or their 8-hour visit, whatever it may be, because we offer stable employment. We want to ensure that our staff have 40 or more hours per week. And if a client is, I don't want to sound harsh, but disrespectful enough where they're like, oh, we forgot we're on vacation, we're going to have to cancel our clean tomorrow. Sorry, you should have been a little bit more organized. You need to have respect for the fact, like your video editor, she was demanding that you respect her time, Brandon. That's all she was asking. So she needs to make her time. We need to make our time too. So I take it as a personal goal with our management in our office that if somebody cancels tomorrow or in 2 days, we hold it for ourselves where if we don't fill that, we pay them anyways. And then in my head and in our office mind, that's money out of our pocket. So we take it upon ourselves to ensure that we have those 40 hours a week. Granted, we have a huge mail list for our clients. We have a lot of clients. So I'm talking, 5-6 years in, we have built that where we can maybe send an email out to our mail list and say, oh, we have a rare 4-hour time spot tomorrow, or put a post on Instagram, and somebody 99% of the time snags it up. But when I think about when I first started, I could have done that even with the clients that I have now. And I never did because I was almost scared to do it. I didn't want people to think that we didn't have it. But it's all on how you word it. Now we send out a note or an email to our mail list, and it's all done like a MailChimp. We do use MailChimp for our mail outs. And we send it out saying that we have a rare opening available. And just that on itself, people snag it up quick. We get emails and DMs on Instagram saying, oh, I'll take it. And 90% of the time, they're the clients that we already have that know that we're strictly on a 4-hour every 2 week or 1 week, or even every 4-week visit with them. And so they're like chomping at the bit to get another one because the chances of them ever getting an extra clean are very slim. So they eat it up. And so if we don't send out those those emails, or don't make a post on Instagram, or don't reach out to a client where, again, we have a system where if somebody's reached out, we can't fit them in, we put a list, like a waiting list together. If we don't have those processes and those systems in place, and now we have a 4-hour or an 8-hour opening, and we haven't put those things in place to be able to track those things, we're then going to be out, and I have to pay my staff. So now not only am I out, the $500 day from the client for easy number, I'm now going to be out another $500 because now I'm going to have to pay my staff the hours that I have guaranteed them. So that's how I've done it. Yes, it's intimidating, especially maybe being a new business, but you can still take those steps and processes and systems in place at the very beginning to ensure that with growth of your business that you can definitely guarantee those for your client, your new employees coming in.
I'm wondering on your pricing, if you think hourly, you have a minimum of 4 hours for, what did you say, a 2,400 square foot house?
Yeah, anything from 1,000 up to $24.99. And then after that, we do an 8-hour.
That's 4 hours. Why or how would it work to price that as a flat rate versus telling them it's an hour minimum? So you say we have a 4-hour minimum and we charge $50. Is that what you charge?
Yeah. So for
residential.
Yeah. So for residential on a 4-hour minimum, now
what's your hourly rate for residential? Does it fluctuate?
$45.
Okay, $45. Mm-hmm. So you say
plus HST, like tax.
Oh, plus tax. Service business in Canada has tax?
Yes.
Maybe a service business in the United States has that too. I don't know. It's hard to keep up with all this. Okay, so you say it's $180 plus tax, but you don't say that. You say it's $45 an hour plus tax and it's a 4-hour minimum. And I'm just wondering, this is not really on point topic, but it is a pricing thing that I'm always interested in, because how you phrase things, I think can have matters on people purchasing. And the reason I'm thinking this is because the guy who mows our yard, he doesn't charge us per hour. He doesn't say, I charge $25 an hour with a 1-hour minimum. He says, I charge $25 to mow your yard. And that's different than the hour minimum. Does he spend an hour here? He probably doesn't. I don't know. He's got like 2 or 3 guys that come and whip it out, and they do other things like the bushes and things like that. But my point is, have you thought about or tried just saying, hey, 1,000 to 20, $2,499 square foot is $180 plus tax versus saying 1,000 to 2,499 square feet is 4 hours minimum at $45.
So yes, to all of that. And I will explain how we've done it, where and how we've gotten to this point, and what we do now. So with that, we actually don't tell them it's a 4 hour minimum. And now any clients that are listening, if any, now they know our secret. So how we go about it is on our side, we know what we have to charge hourly to be able to cover our payroll, our G&A, our expenses, our profit, our taxes, all of the stuff that it takes to run a business. We try to be around 30% profit margin. So when we are doing this on our end, we know that we need to ensure our employee works an 8-hour day and that our clients are technically paying, again, for easy numbers. Some jobs do change depending on the type of job, but for minimum 45 per hour for a basic job. So we know that they need to do 8 hours at 45 per hour for us to be able to do to cover our costs, to cover their paid lunch, to cover their drive time, to cover all of the things that we need to do for that employee, plus take home our profit at the end of the day, because that's why we're in business. That's what we need to charge. So on our end, we know that that's what we have to charge per hour, but we don't actually tell the client what it is per hour. We don't say we have a 4 hour minimum. So now we do our consultation. We do virtual consultations where we just go through their home, we discuss their needs, wants, and then we send them a quote technically for 4 hours or 8 hours, but they don't see that it's broken down into hours. They see that it is 180 plus or 180, whatever it is, plus HST, or the 8 hour one, which would be the 360 plus HST for that. So it's a little bit of almost reverse psychology, or how you word things. When we send out the email, rare opportunity, we have a 4 hour spot open on Thursday morning. People jump on it. So when we send them that quote, sometimes people do write back and say, oh, can we take out the basement to make the quote less? And we say, unfortunately, as of right now, this is what it's going to be. If we feel the need to lessen it or change, we will communicate that to you. But as of right now, this is what it's staying. And unfortunately, take it or leave it. And, you have to be that way with your clients, like your video editor said to you, sorry, Brandon, it's this way or no way, because she has a business to run.
Now, the other thing I was thinking when you said that, I tend to agree that the flat rate, but here's that the flat rate can work better, but it doesn't really matter what we feel like. We need to see data on this. I'm going to see if I can pull up some information on.
Well, I can add insight to a flat rate because we used to do that when I first started.
So do you do I missed this. Do you do the flat rate and say the person will be there for 4 hours? Because you have to tell the person how long they're going to be there because they might want to be in the house. Right.
So we're kind of like a hybrid, I guess, if you want to say it that way. So we quote like it's a flat rate, but so our automated system sends them their text reminders and their email reminders telling them, tomorrow your staff member will come from 8:30 to 12:30 or 1 to 5, whatever they choose, whatever it is bi-weekly for their set services. But when I first started, I did try the flat rate thing. I did it for about 3 weeks until I got immensely taken advantage of. So I would go in, quote a home and think, okay, I could do this in 4 hours. At the time I was charging $20 cash per hour. It's very little. So I'm thinking, okay, cool, $80, I can come in, I will clean for 4 hours based on what it looks like now. And then after 2 visits, now I'm there for 7 hours because the house is a complete pigsty. And now the client thinks that I'm charging her $80 just to clean the house, no matter how long it takes, which is flippin' disrespectful and rude because we have a business to run. And so I'm now charging technically $10 an hour. That can't cover, that doesn't even cover my living when I was cleaning myself, let alone having employees. So you have to be really careful with the flat rate thing, because if you tell a client, oh, I'm going to come clean your house for $180, they're going to throw to-do lists at you. They're going to throw requests at you, because in their eyes, they're getting $180 and they're going to take as much, like they're going to try to get as much out of that as possible. So we almost quote flat rate, but give them a time limit, if that makes sense. And I don't know, I'm going to be very honest to all of our listeners. I really don't know how to explain how we did that, but it works for us. That's what we've done. And it's worked for a lot of the smaller cleaning businesses that I've mentored that are starting out that have done it that way also.
So flat rate, not to exceed 4 hours is basically what you say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think you do have to do that, because as you were talking, I found for software development, when we had that company, which is a service-based company, and really even when we do it internally, we have a software company now, and we're looking at, because of how you build software or build anything for that matter, you're looking at your costs, your job costs and everything. So I'm talking out loud here because I'm not sure that it actually matters what industry you're in. It can all be seen as an hourly thing, but the flat rate, I think you're correct. We've given people quotes before on a flat rate, and then scope creep is what we call it in the software tech business, is effectively what you described. It's the person who just says, well, we want that feature. Well, we want our basement clean too. And you say, well, that wasn't in the quote. Well, you said flat rate, $180, and now you're getting $10 an hour. And whatever your gross margin is, you basically can't cover your G&A at that point. So you're screwed. Or you're not screwed, you're losing. I guess you are screwed. Depends on how you look at it. You're losing money on that job. I think you have to, what I found is what you've described is, if you do a flat rate, you have to say not to exceed. And if you do not do that, then you will find scope creep, and it will turn into, again, misaligned expectations, and then you'll get into an argument, and then I've never generally found it ending well, mainly because no one is talking logic at that point. Everybody feels some way. And once the emotions and feeling are in, you can't deny how someone feels. So you really can't win that argument. And then if you put logic into it, now you're attacking their feeling, and that escalates things. And it generally, it doesn't end well. So I think that's the right way to do it. And it guarantees your people. One other question. If someone misses, let's say, oh my God, I'm on vacation, I'm so sorry, Danielle, do they pay without complaining, or do they try to negotiate with you if they're gone and say, oh, do I get one free pass, or how's that work?
We do get that a lot. And I'm going to be honest, as harsh as and as much as I have boundaries and have set things in our new client package or our client agreements for every flippin' scenario, it's very true when they say that there's a reason that this rule or this exists, because usually it's happened before. As harsh as I can be, sometimes there are exceptions. I mean, I'm not, for example, if one of our clients, their son was really ill the morning of, and they're doing their due diligence by saying, they're emailing the company and saying, hey guys, listen, our little guy was sent back from daycare. Our clean is this afternoon from 1 to 5. I'd really appreciate it maybe if you didn't come, 1, so he can rest, and 2, so you don't get sick. I'm not going to be a complete asshole. Am I going to lose a little bit of money? Probably. Sometimes, 95% of the time, we can fill that because we're at that level now. But I'm also a person, and so I'm not going to necessarily bill that person. But if it got to an extent where a scenario where every single visit that client was saying the same kind of stuff, then they're taking advantage. So there are limits. I like to be set in stone, black and white, but I'm not going to be a complete biatch and, say, oh, I'm sorry that your son's sick. Here, you're going to have to pay your $200 bill. So I think you just have to kind of like use your own personal stuff. But we do have clients that complain. Like we've had a client before that they were on a bi-weekly set schedule. So they were supposed to receive 4 hours every 2 weeks. And for like 5 months in a row, during COVID, they canceled every other week. So they were getting a service every 4 weeks instead of every 2 weeks. Well, we could put technically another monthly or every 4-week client in that spot. And we never charged her for those times because it was a COVID excuse, or it was this excuse, or it was this. So we always felt bad and we never billed her for it. So then when we said to her, listen, based on your pattern the last 5-6 months, why don't you go on every 4-week schedule until you're kind of ready to go back on your biweekly schedule? And then that wasn't good enough. It was, well, I still need my biweekly service. And so you really just have to kind of mediate with them. Sometimes, just like Brandon's virtual or video editor did, you have to fire clients. Some clients don't like it. We've had clients that have canceled the day before for 3 or 4 weeks in a row. And we've just eventually said, you know what, we're going to have to stop doing business with you because we have other clients who would really appreciate this spot, who will actually use the service. So sometimes you do have to be that person that cancels the service or the business relationship. But for the most part, clients understand it. And we set the expectation from the very beginning. As soon as they do a consultation with us and we send them a quote, they get the new client package attached to the quote. So they read it, and before they even start services, it's not like we get them to sign on the quote that we've sent them and then we send them the new client package. They understand our expectations and our service terms before they even sign the quote. So even if they were okay with the price, but they read in our agreement that if they cancel within like in a 24-hour time spot, they have to pay their service, and they don't like that, then they're not going to sign and continue. So I think it's fair for them to know our expectations right up front, and then they can't argue with it.
Do you make them sign a 6 or 12-month contract?
No. None of our clients are held in a contract. Under our service terms in that new client package, it does state that if they are requiring or asking for biweekly or every 4-week service, that they are like, that's their spot and they can expect that spot. But in that return, we also expect that they're going to honor that. If they genuinely feel like they're not going to be able to uphold or respect that every 2-week or every 4-week service, then we ask that they forfeit it. And then it also says in there, if you cancel 3 visits in a row, you're subject to forfeiture of your services. So it's not a contract, but it's a mutual respect of service for the client and for us.
So it's basically a contract that covers when the person's there cleaning and a way for them to reserve their spot to make sure that their house gets cleaned, or even the commercial sector, whatever you're doing there, every so often. And how can they cancel at any time?
Yes. Yeah, they can, which I think, like in business, with every process and system, everything comes into, like, it all goes into like a circle almost. It all feeds into another. We're very lucky that we don't have many, I can't even remember the last time a client canceled due to service. During COVID, a lot of it was job loss. Their husbands lost their job because of COVID, or, they had extra expenses, their hours were cut in half or anything like that. So we did lose some clients over COVID due to job loss, sick people getting really sick with COVID. And I appreciate those clients that email and say, listen, my husband has come down with COVID. That means my kid's probably going to get COVID. So for the next 2 months, let's cancel services for the next 2 months, and then we'll resume. And we're okay with that because we can fill those spots if we have the notice to be able to do that. And I can appreciate and respect that. But don't email us, every morning before your spot to cancel last minute, because that's not fair to the staff that we're trying to give 40 hours a week to. And it's not fair to us really on a financial basis either. And it's not fair to am. I mean, it just doesn't look good for both parties. I just don't like that there's that disrespect or no regard for each other's time. Like, I would never cancel unless like the weather's so bad up here. We don't cancel last minute. And if we do have to, it's very rare. And then we reschedule like the next following day or as close to as possible. And that's usually just when the weather is really bad, that the roads are all closed up here.
Makes sense.
And these are the things that you learn, right, as you go. I mean, I don't want to say to all of our business owners listening that are maybe thinking of a cleaning business or any kind of service business that these are the things that you should know right off the hop, because you don't. And I can say that these are things that have taken 3-4 years to learn. And we're in our 6th year now. And yeah, we have our systems and our processes in place for where we're at right now. I would have never thought of these things from the very beginning. And that's why I like to share these experiences and these things that we've learned, because I feel like if we would have put all of this into play in maybe our 2nd year, we would be 10 times what we are now with retaining great staff. You know, we've lost a lot of staff from the very beginning that I hired because of that. And again, it's all growing pains. There's things that you learn. And I just wish I would have known these things then, but I'm thankful that I know them now.
As you were talking, I was just thinking of all the service businesses that we've run and the different parameters and service businesses that we use in the parameters, because you have to guarantee, I think, your people to have the hours. Otherwise, that switching cost that we talked about, I think, just weighs on everybody, and it affects your product, which is your service. It affects the quality of that. It can over time. I was thinking of our gardener, because how does he avoid scope creep? And interesting enough, what he did is that it's a fixed rate every week. They come, they do trim our bushes, they do weeding, basically and he quoted based on that, I guess, workload, which he probably estimated by the hour or just estimated. How he avoids scope creep is he says that they will trim and keep everything looking nice as long as it doesn't require a ladder. So if it requires a ladder, it goes to hourly, which they can generally quote, or he does that by the hour, mainly because those jobs, trimming our big tree and thinning it out, who knows how long that's going to take. And more often than not, he'll come and one of us is home, and he'll say, does that look good? And, I'll say more off the top and more in the middle. Whereas if he quoted that as general, he'd probably lose money. So that's how he did it. When we had our software engineering company, I think for the most part, I learned that we really stuck by the hour and kept regular meetings with the client. Now, the problem with that is that the client doesn't always show up. And then you're faced with, well, the client didn't show up this week. Are we going to keep going? And what I learned from getting burned, because I used to stop. Well, then you stop, and now your hourly people are screwed, or you are, because now you have to have cash flow or another business. Then you switch to another project, and it's tough. I'm sure lawyers have this problem too. Any sort of service business, lawyers or accountant, anyone like that. Although I think accountants generally, for tax season here in the United States coming up, is a fixed rate per type of company or personal. But the hourly stuff is during the year. I'm talking out loud here of how all the people make sure that they keep their people employed effectively and still make money. So I think my takeaway from this conversation is reflecting on your business and the service businesses that we've had. You really have to you can do fixed price not to exceed, and then you got to keep track of your hours, but that's just life on that. Otherwise, it's scope creep. I have paid people, quote unquote, retainers And I have generally never had a good experience. I'm saying generally because I really need to think back. But PR firms, I had a PR firm. It was set rate, $10,000 a month retainer. Mismatched expectations. I wasn't happy because then I was, however many placements we got, I was dividing it by 10,000, and I was saying, well, for that much money, we could do something else. So I've had terrible experience there. Generally had terrible experiences on marketing media companies who charge for paid ad stuff. Fixed rate, never felt like they delivered on the amount of money. In the beginning, for sure. I'm sure they took a loss, and we went through several people before we wound up with a lady who's really good now. But I've never, on those fixed rates, really been satisfied. And I think it's all because of the mismatched expectations. So I think you got to do, if you do fixed rate, it has to be not to exceed, and you got to set people's expectations. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And I think what you do, actually, Yvette does with her business, a dog training facility, she says the same thing. Like, hey, here's what I have to do to run my business. If you can't commit, that's fine. We'll get someone else. Because if she doesn't have that, then she has instructors that they need their money. We can talk about that. She set it up a little bit differently, which is an interesting thing. Maybe we can talk about freelancers sometime. And I'm talking completely out loud because here thinking through this, but I think you have to, for your own business and to protect your time, you have to do, if you do set rate and pricing, it has to be not to exceed, and you need to adjust expectations. Otherwise, you'll wind up at houses like you did for 8 hours when it really should have been 4.
Right. And in a situation, I just want to add to that, in a situation like that, if I think, okay, I'm going to be here for 4 hours at $80, and now I'm there for 8 hours, and now I'm taking home $10 an hour. Even, I've talked to people about this and they go, well, why wouldn't you just leave after 4 hours? Because that's not what we agreed on, right? Like I technically agreed with the client that I would come and clean their house for $80. So if I was to leave, yeah, you and I talking about this would make sense because they took advantage. But if I'm trying to build a business and I leave halfway through because I've technically done my money's worth, I'm going to get bad reviews. People are going to talk bad about the business. So it just doesn't win for anybody. So I'm really open about our new client package, about our service terms, things like that with our clients, and even with the people that I mentor for cleaning businesses, startups, or any home-based or home service businesses, because I think it's really important for them to understand that there's reasons that these rules are in place. And people do question, oh, well, why is this here? Why is this here? Even, for example, we have a lot of weekend homes, especially up here in Canada. The snow is really bad. We get a lot of snow. So we have weekend homes where they're only there on the weekend, and then we clean maybe on a Wednesday. And so having second properties, you need to make sure that you have property managers in place or people to take care of them. There's been times where we've went to clean every week on a Wednesday after they've left on a Sunday, and we got 3 feet of snow on a Monday. Well, their driveway is not plowed. Their walkway is not salted. And now our staff think that they have to walk through 3 feet of snow. That's not fair for them either. So again, we've now put in our new client package that if you guys have a weekend home, or if any of our clients have weekend homes, it's their responsibility to ensure that they have communications with their property manager to make sure that the snow is gone and plowed for when we come. And if not, they're charged their rate. Because that's not fair, right? If they get there and the driveway is not plowed or salted and our staff end up getting stuck in their driveway, that's now another cost to us to get them out or have CAA come. And so it's a big, vicious circle if you don't outline your expectations to your clients on service charges and time frame and stuff like that.
I think it can be scary to do that because you don't want to lose business. But by the same token, if you don't do it, you get bad business result for everybody. And then that results ultimately in possibly no business for you.
Well, and it can be
So you
scary, right? Like, to add to that, because if I said to that client, I'm going to have to charge you for today because you didn't have your driveway plowed, and they're going to get pissed off and they're going to, maybe leave and go elsewhere. But we weren't going to be able to clean their place anyways. And this is a real example. We had a client that had a weekend home, and this past winter, 3 times in a row, our residential staff went to go and clean there, and the driveway wasn't done and it wasn't salted, and the gate was plowed up with 3 feet of snow. And 2 times out of those 3, our staff members got stuck, and they bitched and complained about having to pay. And one of the times we didn't charge them because shit happens. It is what it is. It was a freak snowstorm, blah, blah, blah. But the next 2 times, it's your responsibility as a property owner. And so they went elsewhere. But I talked to our staff and they were, well, what about them going elsewhere? We haven't been paid from this client for 3 of these visits anyways. And now I'm out the money for the CAA to get our staff unstuck and to pay them for the 4 hours they were supposed to clean there. So honestly, they can go elsewhere because we'll have a client now that we can put in that spot that will hopefully respect our service terms and agreement moving forward.
A good client is better than a bad client. And I think that sort of sums it up.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. And so very important as business owners to ensure that you have enough work, take it upon yourself to get the work for your employees so they stay with you, especially if they're a great employee that you want to keep and grow your company with. You definitely don't want them to go elsewhere. And take it as a personal responsibility and hold accountability for yourself to grow your business.
Great wrap up. Enjoy your week.
You too. Enjoy. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.